200 years ago, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm traveled around northern Europe collecting stories. They cataloged these fairy tales into a book, which we now know as Grimm's Fairy Tales. Jacob and Wilhelm did this because these stories were an important part of their nation's shared history, and they did not want these stories to be forgotten. In Australia, the native people have extensive oral histories dating back 10,000 years. These stories are a remnant from when the world was a completely different place. 1,000 years ago in Japan, the Tale of Genji was written, and is known as the world's first novel. Stories have been with humans since the beginning of time. We use stories as a tool to entertain each other, to warn each other, and to teach lessons. We are surrounded by the stories we hear in news articles, books, plays, television, movies. And with this vast amount of information comes plenty of media that is, to put it simply, just plain crappy. There are so many terrible stories out there. And there's some good stories too. But for us to continue creating great stories that last generations, there are a few things that we need. Number 1 is diversity. Number 2 is depth. And number 3 is development. These are the attributes that create great stories. Okay, so the vast amount of stories that we tell have characters. They feature characters in them. And Hank Green, a successful author and YouTuber, says that when you're writing a story, you have to love your characters. Amazing stories have amazing characters. And some things that make these characters even better is diversity. Diverse characters, draw in an audience and enrich the story. And because we live in a diverse world, when you have diversity in your stories, it creates characters that people can relate to. And in most books and movies, the majority of characters are white. Not only does this make stories less interesting, but it also alienates portions of the audience. The movie Black Panther was so impactful because, and it still is impactful, it's because it was one of the first widespread, popular, big-budget films that had Black heroes and who portrayed good Black role models. And it gave so many children role models to look up to and, role models that looks like them. And stories also need good LGBTQ representation because people have yet to come out, or people who are still struggling with who they are need to know that they're accepted and supported and seen, and diversity in media and representation can help with this. And representation gives minority groups the message that they are loved and that they can still contribute good things to society. Diversity in stories not only helps minority groups, it also helps majority groups. Stories put you into the shoes of the characters. They put you into the head of the narrator, and this can build empathy. According to psychologist William Chopik, stories expose us to uncomfortable ideas and provide us with the opportunities to take in other people's perspectives in a safe distance way. When we watch or read stories about people who are different than us, it can increase our understanding of their struggles and the kind of life that they go through. Diversity in stories is important because we live in a diverse world, and if we want to have a proper understanding of that world, then we need to have a proper understanding of all of the characters who live in it. And one famous book series that has been accredited for its diversity is the Percy Jackson series. It follows the tale of a 12-year-old boy who finds out that he is the son of Poseidon. And it just follows all of his adventures and all the things that he does. And while the author, Rick Riordan, did have much diversity in his later book series, if you go back to the original Percy Jackson series, you'll notice that most of the characters are white. But while they are not diverse in their ethnicity, they are diverse in their personalities, opinions, and experiences. And this brings me to my second point, which is that stories need to have depth. When stories feature characters and plots that delve deep into emotion and, background and context and everything that's happening, it makes the story come alive. And consumers of the story find it more interesting when there is more to the story than what meets the eye. The Percy Jackson series is loved because of the depth to the characters and to the extent to which the audience members can connect to their emotions and to their experiences. And without the depth that Rick Riordan dives into the characters, this would not be possible. And the same can be said for Pride and Prejudice. Although it was published 200 years ago, this book is still read and admired, and people still admire the character depth and just the depth of the story. To have an incredible story, there have to be incredible characters with layers of emotion and motive, and this can also help drive the plot. It will make it more interesting because the characters' actions will reflect the depth of their emotions, and then their actions can drive the plot forward. Would you rather read a story with shallow characters who have no dreams and no aspirations and don't actually do anything, or would you rather read a story with depth and twists and turns? I think that I'd rather read, the second option. And the stories that we remember the most will be stories with characters that are intriguing and a plot that is driven by those characters. And this cannot happen without depth. And not only do stories need diverse characters and depth, but they also need development. If we want our great stories to be passed down, then we have to have great character development. And character development refers to the process that characters go through throughout the story. Movies, books, and plays almost never have the character end in the same place that they begin. When stories have characters that change and grow and learn from their mistakes and from their experiences, it shows real people that they can do that too. And one beloved story that excels at this is Avatar: The Last Airbender. And this children's TV show has won the Peabody Award, the Kids' Choice Award for Favorite Cartoon, and the Primetime Creative Arts Emmy Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Animation. That's a mouthful, isn't it? So, Avatar: The Last Airbender is an amazing story because every single one of the characters goes through character development. There is not one character that, ends the story at the same plane where they were in the beginning. And so this TV show follows a group of children who are tasked with saving the world from an evil empire of sorts. But the wonderful thing about this story is that although in the beginning you think the villain is going to be a 15-year-old boy named Zuko, at the end you realize that he's not the villain, and he goes through an incredible character arc and development. And what makes it so phenomenal is that it's so natural and honest, and it takes a long time, and he has to learn from his mistakes. I started watching Avatar: The Last Airbender when I was 6 years old, and I still watch it today because it is such an amazing story. And now it has become so popular that Netflix is actually making a live-action series based on it. And character development makes the story better in that it reflects the development that real people go through. And this helps them connect with the storyline and the characters. Development is important because it makes better and more memorable stories. And don't we want to create better stories? Don't we want to create the best narratives that we can? And don't we want our stories to be remembered? Imagine if we applied these attributes to stories that go beyond entertainment. What if new stories examined the depth of a situation? What if history showed the diversity of opinions and impact that surrounds a certain event? What if we delved deep into the lives of individuals and, just everything that has happened in the context of events? Think about what would happen if religious stories or inspirational stories not only showed, good role models, but showed the development that these people had to go through to get to become these figures that we admire. And if we apply these attributes of diversity and depth and development to the stories that we tell now, then like the native Australians and like the Tale of Genji, and like Grimm's fairy tales, we can create amazing stories that impact people and that connect with people for generations. And stories are so important, and they've been with us forever. So if we want stories to continue to be with us in the future, then we need to use diversity, depth, and development to create stories that will be memorable and impactful. Thank you.